Greetings everybody, my name is Gibbs, you can call me Gilbert. In today's video, I'll be covering 4 topics. The first topic is going to be about a catalyst that is brewing at the current moment that will maybe happen in 2020. I think this is going to be a very important catalyst for the future of the cannabis industry. And this is about legalization, okay, for New York. This is massive. I think it will affect or send shockwave all across the market. And so I want to give an update on that and give my opinion on that catalyst, okay? The second topic I'll be covering will be about Aphria, them receiving $100 million investment. Aphria already had a good financial statement, but receiving extra cash is not so bad. So I want to give an update and my opinion on this news. The third topic I'll be covering will be for a viewer subscriber that asked my opinion on Inner Spirit Holding, which is a cannabis company that's focused in distribution but has a different type of strategy regarding their franchise. Okay, so I want to go over their slide presentation, their financial statement, and the stock chart. Really give my opinion on this different type of strategy. And the final topic I'll be covering will be about Auxly. For a viewer subscriber that asks my opinion on this company, I'll go over the slide presentation, financial statement, and the stock chart. Okay. But before I get started in today's video, I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone that commented, and subscribed to the channel. Thank you so much for all your support. Welcome to the new subscribers, and let's get started. And now to talk about the buzz of New York legalizing cannabis products for 2020. It's a buzz, and I do believe this type of catalyst will send shockwave, positive shockwave, throughout the entire cannabis market. Okay, so here it says cannabis firm cautiously optimistic New York could legalize adult use sales this year. If you thought California was a great market, best believe New York is going to be bigger. New York is known to be the city for the globe, for the entire planet. If there's a city that's making money, it is New York. New York is the hub of business. And best believe, investing money for entrepreneur is not going to be an issue. And best believe that people who go to New York are not cheap. When they buy a good amount. So they can pump the price of those cannabis products and people are still going to buy. Okay. Market size would depend in part on how many licenses are allowed and potential business restriction, because if they don't put any restriction, best believe people, well, you live in New York, you have money. Okay, so best believe they need to put a restriction. They need to put a limit, and those licenses are going to be very valuable. The valuation of those companies are going to skyrocket, especially in New York. You already have some restriction. Okay, if you don't put a number cap in that area, man, you're gonna have a retail store on every street basically. Now the downside of it, the obstacle is lawmakers would have to agree where revenues would go. Now I don't think this is a huge trouble, because if you have money, I'm sure they're gonna figure out a way on which community, which segment or area would be able to use the money. No problem with that. I think this is a small roadblock. But the other one is key legislative leaders would need convincing that communities disadvantaged by the war on drugs will benefit from legalized recreational cannabis business opportunity. I want to work on that point, okay? If you need some arguments, here are some arguments. Number one, would you rather have people use uncontrolled product, meaning they're not produced with GMP, good manufacturing practice, non-controlled, with poor quality? And another thing is, if you legalize it, can you think of the amount of patient that would be relief of pain? Okay, that's number two. Number three, if you have a problem, you deal with it instead of just postponing, creating some distance between the problem. If you have a community or a certain percentage of the population that's using cannabis, they're hiding from it, but they really need the product. Why not allow companies that have the expertise, the technical knowledge on how to produce it the right way, the safe way, and on top of that, giving it to the people who need it, well, selling it to the people who need it in a controlled way. Okay, so that's very, very important. And on top of that, teaching or giving them information on how to use it the proper way. And I think, yes, dried cannabis, like I mentioned multiple times, is great. It helps out. But if they had the vape pen, if they had the capsule gel, yes, they would take it for a short period of time. They would have the effect, but best believe that effect would be gone. Educators can explain how the weaning off works. What's the half lifetime of those products? Just inform instead of just running away from the problem. How about you tackle right on and educate. Just educate. It's a lot easier to invest and be proactive on an issue than just trying to tell the population don't do it without any good explanation, because now we know that cannabis product can be actually very useful on a medical area. Okay, now there are some finance hurdles and other barriers ahead. Like, for example, yes, you could legalize it, but then the banks would have certain issues in financing those activities. And at the same time, they're working on different types of license. So you have the processing license, the cultivation license, the sales license. And on top of that, if a business would acquire a building, of course, there's still going to be laws that would say, yeah, you can sell, but you cannot use that building to sell the product, right? Because you would be breaking certain rules. So even though legalization is still part of a hot topic, there's multiple hot debate that needs to go through. But it's just nice to know that the governor, the population is very in favor of this type of change, because that's all you need, right? Population, majority, and lawmakers realizing money can be made, and that those usually are the main driving force. Okay, and then you have the medical need. That's a very nice catalyst as well that would help politician make a decision on this issue. Okay, so here it talks also about licensing and social equity questions, but this is very promising. Now, do I think it's going to be in 2020? If it does, I think it'd be very late 2020. But to be realistic, this type of buzz can be very good for the overall market. But I do believe it would at least take a year to make things clear and build up the infrastructure for a cannabis organization, legal organization in New York to set up to be able to regulate the activities of cannabis product in that area. They would need a massive amount of people in their infrastructure, okay, to do the administrative work. Okay, that would be massive. But this is some good news. It's moving forward, and we already have the driving force. All right, so let's hope this happens. Might take a while, but it's good news. Okay, moving on to the next topic. And now to talk about Aphria's massive investment. Cannabis firm Aphria signs deal for $100 million Canadian investment from institutional investor, from CTV News. Okay, a couple of things I want to say about this. Aphria already had a very good financial statement. They were very close from hitting even, okay, from if you look at the number of the net loss. That was really very good. The other thing, they had decent margin, not the best, but they had decent margin. But another thing that was really great about Aphria is they had controlled expenses, which was great. And they had a good amount of cash that they were working with. Increasing your cash reserve is like the theme of 2020. This is why Aphria, I think, is an even better pick at the current moment for my short to mid-term play, in my opinion. When I say short to mid-term, I want to say between February to November. I haven't jumped into Aphria just yet, but this confirms it even more. I love the fact that they get more cash reserve because they're one of the few in the top tier Canadian cannabis company that is looking very, very healthy. Now, two flags I want to point out regarding this because it's not always good news. Number one is unidentified institutional investor. Uh, what type of institution can drop 100 million? That's sketchy. Now, I know Aphria is coming off a sketchy, fake alert news that they acquired like bad assets in South America, and now they're trying to win it off. But having this type of investment with this huge amount, to me, let's see how it plays out until the second financial statement. I hope no other lawsuit would happen. And another flag that I want to point out is here it says Aphria would use this money for international expansion, working capital, and general corporate purposes. Okay, I don't know what they mean by general corporate purposes, but I think that the market being this young, corporate has a good enough salary. Okay, if they're looking for bonuses, okay, let's just wait it out and see Aphria hit profitability before management team gets some bonuses. But finance international expansion, I do hope they get better deals. It's just it takes a long time. You know, Aurora Cannabis has the most presence on the globe in terms of being in different markets. It's just it takes a while for those markets to mature and generate profit, right? So I hope Aphria learns from that. They go into investment slowly, depending on how the demand is, and not just brush off most of their cash reserve. Working capital is also fine. You know, help out your workers' expenses. That's always fine. Okay, so that's my take on the $100 million investment. And if you look at the stock on the weekly time frame, this is in Canadian dollar. Right now it's like 693. I didn't jump in yet. Right now the MACD is pushing upwards, but I still think that the push is very weak. The volume has been green previously because of the financial statement of what Aphria has done. But I do believe that if it was anywhere close to 639, for me, it's a beautiful entering for me, especially for a company that has a good amount of reserve now. Okay, so I'm very, very happy. But if you jumped in lower than 639, if you jumped in at around 5, I would hold it until November because that's a very, very nice price. And on top of that, right now RSI is a little bit high for me. So it's at 46%. So for me, I'm just weighing a little bit more. Okay, but chances are it's gonna go up because of the investment. Moving on to the next topic. And now to give my opinion on Inner Spirit Holden for a viewer subscriber that asked my opinion on the company, I'll go over the slide presentation, financial statement, and the stock chart. I think this company has a business model that's very, very interesting, just like franchising a restaurant. So I want to give my opinion on that specific slide. 25,000 upfront franchise fee, 5% royalty on gross sales, 1% of gross sales allocated to Spirit Leaf Advertising Fund. Okay, now I don't have a problem with 5%. 25,000 upfront franchise fee. That's just to have the franchise. I think this type of business is very interesting because we've seen how big food companies are doing. A lot of people know that they love their product. They go for it, such as McDonald's, Burger King, Tim Hortons. These different types of food companies are very lucrative if you're located in the right place. Now, this number one, there's already a shortage of retail stores. So I think this is going to be very interesting. Okay, I think it could be very lucrative for an investor to jump into that. I think 25,000 upfront franchise fee is not all that much. So the standard is not all that high. However, I do want to point out that this is just for franchise. Now, to set up a store, have the decoration, have the team, have the management team, comply to Health Canada's standards, have training, because just like if you acquire McDonald's, you will have training, okay? At the same time, not only that, you will have to constantly be updated on the new standards. It's basically a full-time job on top of you investing your own money into acquiring this type of shop, if you want, retail store. That's a lot, of work. They didn't mention anything about obtaining license. Maybe you could obtain the license with their aid, with their consultation, and it would be a type of partner between the investor and Spirit Leaf. But I think this type of business is very interesting at the start because of the lack of retail. But for the long run, I think the value would be capping at a certain point, just because Health Canada right now is releasing more and more licenses, and over time, I do believe bigger companies are gonna acquire more of the market share, and I do believe customers, just like what most market do or happens with them, evolve. Most customers fluctuate towards a big brand like Canopy, Aurora Cannabis, Aphria. So those smaller company, I think Spirit Leaf is a smaller tier company, um, would have some sort of a challenge to deal with and trying to acquire customers. But because of the lack of supply, I think right now is a very interesting type of business, and I think this is very good for for the company itself to acquire 5% of royalty. I don't think it's too aggressive, and I don't think it's too little. I think it's right amount of percentage. That's very interesting. Okay, for now, I think that's my take on it. So for September 30, 2019, on Inner Spirit Holding cash, they were sitting on close to 4 million Canadian dollar, which is not bad for a small company. Some other company, they have even smaller amount of reserve. Revenue, total revenue, close to 4 million as well, which is not bad at all. Total operating expenses, close to 3 million. Now you add other expenses, you have a net loss of 2.4, around 2.4 million dollar. I think this is pretty impressive financial statement for a company that's been under the radar. In my opinion, this is the first time I'm hearing from them. I would say that their financial statement, their financial situation is probably a B plus. It could be a lot better. I mean, having a net loss of 2.4 is not great, but knowing that your revenue is bigger than your net loss, and at the same time your cash reserve is also bigger than your net loss, for now it's okay. I hope it gets better. If we look at the gross profit is 1.8 million, knowing full well that the total revenue is close to 4 million, I say that the margin is close to 50%, so that's really not so bad. So that's why I give them a B plus or a B. Okay, moving to the stock. So this is Inner Spirit Holding in Canadian dollar. This is on a weekly time frame. I zoomed in because if you zoom out, it looks like it's at a beautiful price. But if you zoom in, you can tell that, to me, I can already tell it's gonna be a higher low. And the trend is definitely going down. The RSI is flat right now at 39%. To me, even though it's good financially, I think it's very risky to jump into smaller company at the current moment, just because right now, like I said multiple times, the overall sentiment of the market is very fragile. Okay, very, very fragile. So I'd be very careful. The other thing is the MACD is pushing upwards, but it's very weak. Okay, and that's why I think it will continue going up a little, then come back down a little. If I wanted to jump in, I would maybe wait around 9 cent Canadian to be at a beautiful price. But to me, it's a definitely wait. Okay, I want to see what happens in the next financial statement and if they get more retail store presence in that area, because that just means they would get steady revenue from the 5% gross sales acquisition from opening stores. Okay, so that's my take on Inner Spirit Holding. Moving on to the next topic. And now to give my opinion on Auxly on their slide presentation, a financial statement, and stock chart for a viewer subscriber that asked my opinion on this company. It's been a long time coming. I apologize for the long wait. Okay, so I'm gonna go straight to the important slides that I find important that makes Auxly original. Is this their management team? They have a lot of contact in the business, and I think Auxly is gonna be one of the few cannabis distributors out there that will be able to sustain the weaning off of the cannabis companies, just because of their connections. I mean, connected to Canopy Growth, connected to Pepsi, connected to um, Pfizer. I mean, these are big players, okay? So they have connection, and I think if they needed advice or um, deals to get done, I think they would have the personnel to make things happen. So on the management team, they have one of the best. Now, something that I want to point out regarding Auxly. A portfolio of cultivation asset provide expected supply of over 100,000 kilogram per year. The next thing is they have 300-acre hemp cultivation and purchase agreement with a hemp farming cooperative in PEI, expected to result in approximately 100,000 kilograms of hemp biomass for the 2019 cultivation season. Okay. The other thing is focus on low cost cultivation, including a large outdoor hemp cultivation footprint in Uruguay. Okay. Ability to share best practice among subsidiary and partners. That's another thing. But they're going to be producing 100,000 for cannabis, 100,000 with hemp. I think this is going to be massive because that just puts them as a top tier cannabis supplier, in my opinion. Because the moment you break 100,000, you're in the top tier, and that's really good about Auxly. Plus, they're working on lowering their costs. The other thing I want to point out is they have a state-of-the-art GMP compliant 52,000 square feet facility. They have a CO2 and cold ethanol extraction capability. CO2 capacity is 14,000 kilogram. And like I said, why I love ethanol so much is because the capacity of production is going to be 140,000 kilogram per year. That's a whole lot of oil. Okay, that's a whole lot of oil. Distillation and purification capability, meaning they can go as pure as they want based on the word distillation. And they're working on some research with this CRO, full service contract research organization, with KGK. Trusted CRO with 22 years of experience, clinical trials, strong relationship with decision maker in Health Canada and the FDA, extensive network of industry partner. That's very good, because if they do find a way to patent any sort of result, kudos to them. So, as September 30, 2019 financial statement, their cash was 186.5. Their goodwill was 34.9. Okay, so that's very impressive in terms of goodwill. Okay, so that's not so bad. They have good amount of reserve. Total revenue, they generated 1.6, and the gross profit is 969. That is more than half. So I can tell this is really good gross margin, gross profit 1.1. Great. If you add all the total expenses, the biggest issue is selling, general, and administrative expenses. That was 16.59. The total expense is 22. So they're at a net loss of 17. So in my opinion, if you look at the ratio of the total revenue that they generate, 1.6, and the total expense that was 16, even though they have good amount of cash reserve, I think the ratio between revenue and the expense is way off, in my opinion. So because of that, I'd be very careful in jumping on Auxly. Even though they have good operation, great partner, and great management team, I'd be very careful just because of their financial statement. And the net loss is ridiculous. I mean, it's 20 times the revenue. Okay, so this is Auxly on the weekly time frame. This is going to be in US dollar. Right now, Auxly is at 50 cents. Now, if I zoom out, it looks like it's at a beautiful price. However, we're looking at the now. Me personally, I'm looking at making plays for the short to midterm, so I'm zooming in, right? Now, a couple of things I want to mention. RSI is pretty high at 45%. And the MACD is telling me that the pressure is definitely building up. We see that the blue line is passing the red line, so that means the momentum is pushing upwards. However, I do believe it's a very weak push upwards. We're already seeing a drop, a red candle. The volume is red, and the intensity of that push is very weak. So I believe that the downtrend is gonna definitely continue, in my opinion, even though it's at a beautiful price. Right now it's at 50 cents US dollar. So if I wanted to jump in, I would try to get in at the lowest possible if I wanted to jump into a company like Auxly. So I would wait around at least 40 cent US. Okay, but for me, I think this stock is going to be very volatile, very risky. So in my opinion, we would need to wait and just see how the next financial statement would be presented, and I hope they improve the ratio of revenue and expenses. Okay, so to me, that's a wait for now. So this is what I had to say in this video. If you like what I had to say in this video, please give me a like, comment, subscribe if you want. Thank you so much for your time, and see you all in the next video. Take care, everybody.